Good afternoon, students. In about 3 minutes, we will commence. Today's our presentations for the theorists and covering a few other stuff that I have for you. So as you have joined me, please prepare for that. Oh, okay. Oh, gee. Jason, no, I just turned it on. Jason? Jensen, no, I just turned it on. No, I just did, because I noticed it was not on. Okay, I'm going to call names because I think we're about to begin and I want to make sure we don't interrupt to do that, which is not really good. So I have, Alondra, are you there?
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. I don't see you, so pardon me that I have to call out. I see Yesenia, I see Mandy. Diana Garcia? Diana? Okay. Latoya? Yes. I see you, hon. So Diana didn't answer. Evie Valdez? Evie? No. Victoria Ochoa? Thank you. Sierra Papal? Sierra? Okay. Ariel Tidwell? Ariel? Jensen Lucas, yes. And Hannah Rush,
I'm here.
yes. Okay. Yes, I did see your name. And there are some names I cannot see on the screen. Alondra Estrada, yes. Latoya Fruda appears twice. Okay. This afternoon, we did put off the presentation of theorists from last week because we were so busy. But today I am going to focus on that. Let us pray. Let us hope that no one gets anxious or nervous. This is not what this is about. This is for me to be able to not just give you the opportunity to read and absorb all about theorists, but also for me to give you additional information, how much and why we study our theorists in foundations like this course. Now, as we look into our theorists, and you give me your information, you will add notes from each person that is speaking, plus I will embellish upon what has been given to you by colleagues. So we look at, when we read and hope, why is it most important that we look at theorists? There are at least 5 reasons to know about the ideas that these theorists put and sent forth, whether they were in the 19th century, the 18th century, 20th century. They did it because, and we study because of the rebirth of ideas. We see what they did, what they contributed to education, and with all the modern tools and technology, what we have done now is add to that, enhance it. And every time I spoke about theorists and the study of theorists to my students, I placed them in a scenario where what did they do and how did they handle the era of using a feather to write with, plant ink to work, etc. So I just want you to think about that. The use of candlelight, the use of samples, how many samples for it to become a valid study, the transition of testing students to arrive at data to the time they were able to complete their reports. As human beings, you know that a lot of what is gathered is lost as we take time because of circumstances in that era to be able to record the findings. So whenever you read about theorists, take the major contribution, but always in your mind be analytical and say, okay, would these results have been the same if the technology, even typewriters, even biro pens or pens were available, paper, electricity, don't even go yet to the era of technology, would it have changed their findings? So when you studied about, maybe you read about all these contributions in the past, I want you to look at it from that point of view, okay? Because we are critical thinkers. We sift through things. But one of the things that they're telling us, why is this important to still with all that I just mentioned? Because we have a rebirth of ideas to stem. That's like a platform to stem from which to step over or step forward or higher level. And then the other reason they tell us is building the dream again that they had to study how children learn. Most of your theorists that you study in terms of early childhood focused on how children learn best. So they address the prenatal, the postnatal, the environment. Think of all the theories you're going to be hearing about. All their search revolved around what? The child, from his the pre-birth, postnatal, environmental influence on them because the genes they came with, then the preschool age and the post-school age. So everything revolves around those factors. They agree and they disagree, but there are many commonalities as you look at some of the theorists, and there will be a time when we do a crosswalk to see how they match each other and how they disagree with each other. But let's enjoy learning about them. The next one is that it implements current practice, gives us an opportunity to implement current practice. And then the other reason that we look at theorists is, which they gave us 5 reasons, and it empowers our professionalism and it inspires us. So with those, we are going to now take off from what you tell us and allow me to add to what you have said to us. And I will make sure that we learn this in a very interesting manner. So instead of me calling, and I just want to make sure that if you just walked in, call your name so I can give you credit for attendance, and we can start with whoever wants to go first. So I'm still looking for Diana, Victoria, Sierra, Ariel. If you're here, you just walked in, please let me know.
Hi, it's Diana, I'm here.
I see Sarah and I see Diana. Okay, thank you. I'm glad I called you on this. Evie, are you there? Not yet. Okay, and Ariel Tidwell. All right, let's not go over this till just before we dismiss. Who would like to go first and talk to us? Talk to us as though you are telling us, not read. I want you to tell us what you gathered. To me, that is more important. And as you mention your theories, I will add to it. Okay? Who goes first?
I can go first.
Good job, Diana. Thank you.
So I got
Joanne Amos Cominos and Jean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for Jean, I got he was a philosopher and a writer and a composer. His philosophy influenced the progress of enlightenment throughout Europe and the aspects of the French Revolution, as well as he developed modern political, economical, and educational thought. He believed that people in the state of nature were innocent and at their best, and that they corrupted by the unnaturalness of civilization.
Anything else?
For John Amos, I got...
Okay, before you move to Joanne Amos Comenius, allow me to just add a little bit. Thank you, Diana. You covered some. Then factors about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Let me add a little bit more, just to enhance what you said. He advocated natural approaches to child rearing. That means use everything in nature, or realia, which I keep pointing out to my student teachers. Use realia when you're teaching something, the real object if you can, the real item. If you're talking about plants, you just don't say they have roots, leaves, and stems. Bring a plant, let them see it, let them touch it. The nature, if they can go outside and look at nature, it's important. He believed very strongly that that was an enhancement in children learning. Felt that children's natures unfold as a result of maturation. So as they mature, they keep acquiring more. It's the nature of the child. And that is true. It's a general statement, because maturation has to be addressed as maturation for that child's age. Because a child could be 5 years old, but not exposed to all the elements, and not just elements, all the experiences, I should say, that would help enhance that child for his age. You see, we stick with that developmentally appropriate practice, whereas the other child that is not exposed may not have that stage of maturation yet. So whenever we speak of the word mature or maturation, we must always add for the child's age, according to the child's age, okay? And there is an innate timetable, he said, within the child, that he truly, truly wants to learn more. Again, that's excluding factors that are negative in the child's life. But as a 2-year-old becomes curious, and the id, the ego level is there, which everything revolves around him alone. We also have the caution of making sure that if that 2-year-old toddler is not behaving in a curious manner, a destructive manner, because they can be destructive, they'll run into a wall, like I told you, they'll jump from a table. Distance it doesn't matter to them. So when we see that, though, and we think of the maturational age, we are trying to remove physiological barriers and emotional barriers that may inhibit the child. So John Locke is looking at it from the norm, okay? And we wanted to study, remember Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I apologize. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was born 1712. How old is our country? 1776, right? That we won the independence from England. So think of how far back. And he died in 1778. So he lived up to 68 years old, maybe. He did a lot during that era, which is the 18th century. How much have we advanced from the 18th century to even the 19th century? And now we're in the 21st century. Think about it. He thinks of nature, where there are buildings, where there are houses, where there are highways. So what was around Jean-Jacques Rousseau is what he based. And I want you to be open to when you read about stuff. Be open-minded. See the settings, see the environmental issues that impact a person's belief, a person's reason, which is impacted by his findings. So you see what I'm saying? There were no big houses, no transportation. What was transportation at that time? Did they have horses? Not even carts, maybe. So as we look at that, yet he has contributed something to today, which I added about using realia, the nature, and in his naturalism, innately, the child wants to learn from his, and will learn from his surroundings. So that kind of wraps up Jean-Jacques Rousseau as best as I could. So let's move to now Joanne Amos Caminos, please.
So for him, he was considered the father of modern education because he created the theory of education, and his idea was that children learning at a natural pace from simple concepts to challenging theories, and wrote a series of textbooks on teaching methods and subject matter for children as well.
Very true. And anything else, Shen, do you want to add, Diana?
No, that's all I have for him.
Okay, right. So Comenius, if I may. See, I didn't give you this just to get me off the hook of teaching the theories. I just wanted you to be a part of it more than just taking notes. So I hope you bear with me and take notes as I give you additional. John Comenius was born 1592 to 1670. That is the 17th century, just like John Locke. And yet, his writings, he wrote Orbis Pictus, the first picture book, or that's a Latin for picture book, okay? Orbis Pictus. The first picture book for children thought early experiences form what a child would be like. What would a child be like? This was all assumptions, guessing. And he said that education should occur through the senses. Compare that with what last night's class I had literature, the students in literature from Northeastern. And we talked about how important it is to engage all the child's senses when we're teaching a lesson. The hearing, listening, is it they are two, they hear, to listen. They have to be able to visualize it, to say it, to do the tactile part of it, to build it. And if there's an opportunity to smell it. And when we tap into all the senses, the child will remember and it will go into his cognitive domain. Well, he didn't use those words, cognitive domain, in that era, but he was addressing that. And he said education should occur through senses. So if I were to ask you this question, which theorist talked about environment and innate learning according to maturation? You know that was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, but the person that talked about the Orbis Pictus, which is pictures for them to be able to see and experience through the senses, which we are extending today. So we're adding to them. And the interesting factor is that I want you now to think about the pictures, which we call illustrations as well, in that era. Can you envision it, teachers? Can you figure out how these pictures must have been drawn? There were no crayons. Did they make their own paint? I always question that. Were they all over the page? Because as you analyze children's books, which we did last night in our 325 class, we see all the things we should look at in order to decide whether this book, but at that time, to have one picture book was an exciting development. So we give Comenius a lot of credit. And he also went on to say that early learning helps to determine school and life success. We know that. We call it the pre-knowledge or the whatever not the anticipatory, what they bring with them. Yes, their background experience is what we talk about, which he's referring to here. And guess what? He talks about the sensory experiences. Aren't you doing that with early childhood? They feel it, they taste it, they smell it. Yes. And the more you can bring something for them to even smell it, as long as it's not going to hurt them because of asthma. And he also believed teaching learning should progress from easy to difficult. And don't we have that with the standards? Make the connection. When I told you as we started this afternoon session, why do we study the past? We study the past to bring these ideas and rebirth them. We study the past, let me again repeat the reasons, to build the dream of these theorists and continue to have these dreams a reality, to implement their practice and enhance it with current practice. And then the other one was to empower you professionals to see that even way back, things have advanced, but the core of belief of how we teach children existed even when these theorists in the 18th century did their research. the hypothesis. And so we inspire professionals. Those are the 5 reasons. And I repeated them for you to now see the connection as to why Master gave you. It's part of the curriculum. I have to teach it, of course. But to me, having to teach something that doesn't make sense is also non-productive. But this is productive. So I always want my students to be analytical and critical thinkers. And this is why I'm trying to expound upon this. Now, we have covered Diana. I want to give you a round of applause for having been brave enough to present for us first. And have you sent me your theorist report, which was supposed to be a short report? Yes?
No, I haven't sent that to you, but I'll send that to you.
You'll have time to send it. Okay. Thanks, Diana.
No problem.
Now, we're going to move into who else wants to go? Now that you see how easy this is, I'm doing most of the work in addition.
I can go.
Okay, let's thank you.
Montessori. She was born in August 31st, 1870 through May 6, 1952. And she was born into a family of education. And of course, it motivated her to become an educator. And she was the first female of education in Italy. She also was one of the first females to open up a Montessori school hands-on. And she also believed that children learn through their senses through play and being independent. And she believed letting children be free to develop naturally, learn, and she also let them be free because she wanted them to be able to make their own mistakes as we as teachers observe them. And then once while we observing them and they are learning through their experience, their own experience through play, at the end, that's when we as teachers come in and we correct them, letting them know what mistakes that they have made.
Through discovery. We want to call it discovery learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, that terminology, Montessori didn't, but we connect that with what she's trying to tell, which she did tell us, and we gave it a label, discovery learning. And they learn from their mistakes, so they become problem solvers themselves, correct?
Right.
So those 2 terminologies we've connected with Montessori. If you'll allow me before you move to the next one, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
I want to go through what else, and I hope you all are taking notes, because even though you were assigned 1 or 2 theorists, you are learning all these theorists at one time. So you don't have to go and do your search on your own. Of course, if you want to read more about them. But let's learn about Montessori in addition to what our classmate has given us. Yes, Montessori was born in 1870 to 1952. I was already born then. So she's not way back there. She's a 20th century person. So she lived a very long, 82 years old. So she died when I was 2 years old. So I'm bringing you from that 17th century. We skipped the 18th century. We're now in the 19th century, the 20th century, actually, forgive me. Montessori's method for educating young children was that all knowledge comes intrinsically from sensory experience. Is she reminding you of somebody else that said children learn by sensory experiences? Who said that? We just talked about that. Using their senses. Okay, and she's repeating that. This definitely goes with Joanne Pestalozzi. Johan. So again, she says all knowledge comes from intrinsic sensory experiences, learning materials to meet the needs of young children. Now, at this time, she had materials that she could introduce into the classrooms. And prepared environments are essential for learning. Well, what does she mean? The aesthetics of your classroom environment. Those are the important aspects in how you present a classroom, attractive with colors, etc. In addition to preparing how that environment looks in terms of how you seat your desks, how you have everything organized and easily accessible to children, and that everything is at their eye level. Okay. And then she said, respect for children is in the foundation of teaching. We have to do that. We must respect them. And instead of just they must respect us, it's a two-way. It's important. No matter what the age of the child is. Many adults believe that they should be seen and not heard. They have nothing. In the olden days, they were hands to help in the farm. And the more children you had, that was extra hands. And they were not even worthy of going to school for education. No, you are helping us become laborers from early childhood. And that changed. Montessori says, we respect children. Don't we all say that today? So you see how the connection is right there? Large number of public and private Montessori schools that emphasize her approach, methods, and materials are today, but unfortunately not everyone is following her philosophy. They call themselves Montessori. And so be very, very skeptical when you're told your child is going to Montessori school, because the name can be used. It's not against the licensure or whatever, but they're not necessarily. And I will be honest with you, in the 70s, I left England. I did my studies over there and then came here and then studied at Northeastern for my other 2 masters. But I was learning about Montessori schools in Chicago, and I was curious to go visit them. And there were only 2, I didn't go alone, only 2 in the city of Chicago that were truly Montessori schools. And one is the far south side, in the area where President Obama has his home, and one in Evanston. Now, I'm not saying that it is still that, just 2. But be leery of these little places that call themselves Montessori. They're entitled to using the name. No one has a patent and licensing on that name. But the philosophy of Montessori is not necessarily being implemented, okay? Just a caution, something to caution you about. And it says children should have, and learning occurs through play. We have others that will be bringing that up. I want to say Erickson talks about play. We have Piaget who talks about play. So there are quite a few that are already being jumping out at us in similarities to theories. So that covers, and thank you for reporting on Maria Montessori. And you had Pavlov, right? Latoya, you also had Pavlov?
Yes, I did.
All right, please, go ahead.
And Pavlov was born in September 26, 1849 to February 27, 1936. He studied psychology, and he performed and directed experiments on digestion. And he also did a lot of experiment on a lot of dogs.
Yes.
And he also studied methods on children, demonstrating that fear could be learned and then be extinguished in a child classical conditioning, meaning environmental interactions. And he wanted children to have self-confidence and overcome fear and anxiety. And he also was a Nobel Prize winner in Russian sciences. And he also experimented in medicine for over 45 years.
And what year was he born, Latoya? I missed that. Did you get the
September 26, 1849.
Okay, see, there's again, so we've had 17th century, 19th, 20th century, and we have yet to find out the 18th century people. Very good. And you see, and you did cover Pavlov's theory. His belief also was, of course, the stimulus response. And he used his dogs to practice that, right? He also went through some experiments that he would ring a bell, let's say, and the dog would come running. He knew this was feeding time. The dog knew it was feeding time. So he experimented with giving the stimulus, and then he stopped giving the reward. After the stimulus was given, the the subjects he used, which were animals, they stopped responding because they would come running, and then there was no reward there. So it shows human beings in terms of what? If you keep treating children with a negative aspect, eventually they don't even know when to trust you when you're doing something positive with them. It's a lot of psychology in there. So when the dogs realize that, okay, I'm running and the food is not there, I'm going to stop going eventually. That's a stimulus response method that he used, one of the many. And again, it translates that from using on animals to children. Children are creatures of habit, just like animals. When we deviate from the norm and the continuity and the routine, they get lost. They totally give up. And that's how we apply that to our learning as we teach children. And he did more than just what we were just covering, but I don't need to expound upon because Latoya hit more of it. I just needed to put in the stimulus response experiment. Okay, and thank you, Latoya. And who goes next?
I'll go next.
Okay, Ariel. Good.
I had Alexander Sutherland Neal. To some people, he's known as A.S. Neal. He was an educator, a rebel, and an author from the United Kingdom. And he believed that students should have their own freedom when it comes to their education. He founded a school. It's called Summerhill. He founded it in 1921. And again, his philosophy was that he believed that children should have complete control of their education, and that so he created Summerhill to allow students to have an environment where they can grow freely
and play outdoors. It was more an outdoor educational system rather than an enclosed four walls of a small, in those days, the one room schoolhouse and all that. So yeah, he felt let them roam freely, let them learn from. Remember, we had Jean-Jacques Rousseau talk about nature, and this actually Sutherland Neal Alexander believed strongly that if they're out there, they're going to learn automatically by nature, by being free to do so. Least restriction was his belief, and that's so true. And these schools still exist. The names, I don't know if they follow all the beliefs and philosophy and findings of Alexander Sutherland Neal, but they do exist in England still, and they're practiced as best they could. However, because of the educational system, the environment, all that's going on around, the technology and all that, it's not just limited to nature and freedom. There has to be. Don't forget, Montessori also has established the fact that if you allow the child to progress at his own level, which is what her philosophy is, then you're allowing that child to be free to learn as much as he or she can. Unfortunately, and we forgot to say this about Montessori's method, not all children learn with that freedom. They need guidelines, they need directions. So don't think that Montessori is for all children. Don't think that Alexander Sutherland can just decide that the freedom to learn. Why is it that we have to have adults in children's lives to give them direction? Why do we have standards? And at that time, he did not think about standards. So, Ariel, what year was it that he was born? What year was he born?
Give me 1 second. Let me check my notes. He was born in 1883 and he lived to 1973.
So he lived into the 20th century too. Yeah, he was very much connected with Montessori. Remember, they copied that, not copied, but they They mimicked each other. If they knew of a theorist doing a study at that time that they were doing theirs, they were actually competing with each other. And you can see some similarities and differences. But thank you. And who's your next one?
I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but I'm gonna guess that is it Piaget?
Piaget.
Piaget?
You had, oh no, I think you had Susan Isaacs, or you had Piaget. Spell the name for me.
Piaget.
Yeah, you have Piaget. Very important. Go ahead. Go ahead with Piaget. Yes, go ahead.
Jean Piaget.
Yes.
Was a Swiss psychologist and a genetic epistemologist. Epistemology is the physiological study of human knowledge and understanding. The psychiatrist, he lived during the 20th century, and his theory was he had 4 stages of a theory. His theory is that children's mind progress in 4 different stages.
Write those stages down, people and students. I'm sorry, teachers. Go ahead. Sensory motor.
Yes. Pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal academy. This means that children can learn from objects, symbols, and conceptual thoughts.
And those pre-operational stages, what age group? Did you get that? It's 0 to? I think it's 0 to 2 years old. That's the first stage.
Yes. So I believe like each stage, hold on, give me 1 second. Because I have it somewhere.
Yeah, it is. That's the pre-operational, and the second one will take you from 2 to 7, I think, years old, if I remember my.
Yes. So the first one will take you from 0 to 2. Pre-operational will take you to 2 to 7 years old.
Correct.
Pre-operational would be 7 to 11, and
yes.
Formal academy will be 11 years old and older.
Good job. Yes, I'm glad you brought up the years. That's important. So those stages you remember, students, please, teachers, but also remember those the stages, but the ages that are attached to them. Okay, because you will be visiting this throughout your educational field. Thank you, Ed, for allowing me to interrupt you, Ariel. Thanks. Go ahead.
The psychiatrist, he used this theory on his own children. So that's how he developed the theory on this. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
On Jean Piaget, before you continue, that's your second one, so I'm sorry. But he was born 1896 to 1980. No, that's not too far long ago. He is again now a 20th century theorist. And Piaget, in addition to what our classmate just told us, theory of cognitive development. And in cognitive development, it was based on ages and the stages that Ariel just told us about. So I hope you wrote them down. But he also believed that children are little scientists and literally develop their own intelligence. Don't confuse it with IQ. No one can develop IQ. IQ, you're born with it. It's your genes. Environment influencing your genes will bring you to what he's talking about. So he also talks about mental and physical anxiety activities that are important for cognition. Again, cognition is understanding. Understanding some matter, some information, and storing it in the cognitive domain so that when more difficult things are learned or presented, the child can apply what is already understood. So when we talk about cognition, it must be understanding, recognizing, and be able to utilize that material. So many teachers talk about cognition, and we have a lot that don't understand how we can explain and should explain when all these theorists and when you as a teacher must teach so that the information reaches the cognitive domain. So he has been telling this from the beginning. And one of the things that Piaget, he's very, very in all education, universally, Piaget is referred to. And he also talks about project approach to learning. Don't teach a subject only. Use a project. If you're going to study butterflies, do all your thematic unit around them. Let them do something about it. If you're teaching a volcano, about how a volcano works, make them create the volcano, simulate it, and we know how to do that. If you're teaching a body of water and bridges, let them see the water simulated in a whatever you choose and a bridge built over it. This is what he's talking about. Let them see it, let them do it, let them be able to articulate it and explain it, and that will help reach the cognitive domain. And so those are the steps, even though he doesn't go to the segregate each of them for us. And then he actually is a constructivist. He uses that approach. Matching education to children's stages of cognitive development. Again, he repeats that. And of course, active involvement of children in learning activities, which I already said. So if they see it, they hear it, and they do it, it will reach their cognition, their cognitive domain, if you can summarize Piaget in that way. Okay? Thank you, Ariel, and thank you, students, for jotting down that important information on your theories. I hope you're enjoying learning about your theories. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but we're touching the tip of the iceberg for you to kind of hope that you will be interesting to read and apply to your everyday work with your children. I hope so. That's why I like to make sure you get this assignment done. Next, who would like to go?
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my first theorist is John Dewey. He was born in Burlington, Vermont on October 20th of 1859, and he passed away on June 1st of 1952. Okay, he graduated from the University of Vermont in 1879.
Wow.
And leading on, he went to other universities as well, but to get to the point, Dewey inspired many movements from the 20th century. For instance, he started empiricism. He also started humanism, naturalism, contextism, and process of philosophy. So to explain a little bit of each of those, humanism is the philosophy that puts the importance on the value of human beings. Empiricism is all knowledge is derived from sense of experience. Naturalism is everything that comes from nature and their properties and their causes. And contextualism is the importance of context in a particular question. And then process of philosophy is not just the science base of it or experience based of philosophy, but also it's a bridge that talks about religion, philosophy, and science in one. And then after that, Dewey's philosophy was known as the experimentalism or instrumentalism. Sorry, largely centered on human experience. So Dewey's philosophy also believed people acted out of habits. So he believed in progressive education by teaching principles should be based on doing, so not just watching. So like what our professor said earlier, take whatever you're revolving your lesson of the day or the week, it should be based on one main focus and the kids can be hands-on with it.
Yes.
And his theory is important because a class is more of a democracy, more participation than a lecture and the students not being active or participating in the class. Okay, that is all I have for John Dewey.
You know, I love the way you brought in the word democracy. It's amazing because that wraps it up. However, did you notice John Dewey repeated nature again, which was Jean-Jacques Rousseau mentioning? So they're repeating now. Remember now that John Dewey, 20th century. So don't forget they tried to see what their predecessors found and they analyze it and they say, that could work. I don't know if it worked. And if it did work, let me expound on it. Let me do further research on it. Remember, their masters started in the 17th century, as far as 16th, no, 17th, I don't have any more. Yes, Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King or Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, 1483 to 1546, he was another theorist and founder. So they did not, but he based a lot on Bible. So you don't mention here too much about that. But let's go back to the 16th century. So all these 17th, 18th, 19th century people are not overlooking what their predecessors found. They're going to either contradict it, because that's what research does, or to approve, agree, and say, let's play around with it. You see, connect that. Look at the connections. They're not starting from scratch. They shouldn't, because it's like a spiral. Build, and bring it up to what we know today, what exists today, what tools exist, and then we base our hypothesis on what we want to look for, etc., and to prove, right? Okay. So very quickly, I don't want to elaborate too much because I know you covered quite a bit, Victoria. But John Dewey, progressive. He was very progressive in education movement. His interest was from the basis of curriculum, and that's where they started teach using a curriculum and educate children for today, not tomorrow. Now, he opened a Pandora box there. He said, educate them just for today. How many theorists disagreed with Jean Dewey when he opened up that Pandora box? Not tomorrow. You and I today, have new research to show that we are preparing children for adulthood so that they can survive and contribute to their society and to the world as a whole. Yes? He said, concentrate on them for today. He had a lot of people refuting him. Child-centered education, yes. Curriculum-based, I strongly agree. Discovery learning, one of our classmates just talked about discovery learning. Who was it? Who was it that talked about discovery learning? We labeled it as such. Remember? Let them make mistakes and learn and then discover. Who reported on this discovery? And I use the word discovery, I can't remember. But anyway, that covers, who did?
Sorry.
Latoya, you did. Okay, thank you. See the connections coming in now?
Yes.
Let's move on to the next person. Oh, you did Arnold Giselle already?
Yeah, I also did him. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm looking too many notes, so forgive me. I'm actually enjoying your presentations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so he was born in Alma, Wisconsin on June 21st of 1880, and he died on May 29th of 1961. Okay.
Who's talking now? Who's presenting?
It's me, still, Victoria.
Oh, you're still, okay, okay.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
And in 1926, Giselle stumbled upon a video camera and decided he could use the camera to record or study children's reaction to specific stimulus in a controlled environment that he creates. So he'll create the environment for each stimuli that he wanted to try out on the children, in a sense. Right. In his observations, he found that children go through predictable stages of growth. And then he went into a theory known as maturational developmental theory.
Yes.
So in that sense, the child is a product of the environment, but development is directed by a blueprint, as he said at one point, which means that, of course, the child, of course, he grows on their own because of their environment, and based on their environment, they're in a sense, the way they develop is kind of already laid out. So it's like they're kind of pushed or directed towards a certain way they're going to grow up to be. And the theory is important because it helps guide and understand a child's development as well. So so he was big on the environment as a big play to a child's development, but also that is one for, of course, we're going to learn later on that that's just one part of development, but it's not the whole thing as a whole. So that's like at the beginning, that's like a very important piece of information to understand like the way a child grows and develops. And that is
So much like Johann Pestalozzi, that nature is there. And that blueprint that they talked about and the environment. Remember what I said after the child is born? His genes now are not just, they're intertwining, they're not clashing. They're intertwining with environmental factors because as soon as we are born, the environment at home, the family members, the people around us, the speaking, and where we are being raised play an important factor in how we develop. If I grew up in a small village versus a city, it will have impacted my developmental stage. Not my IQ. My IQ is there. See, the whole child develops from its genes and its environmental factors, but we cannot separate those. So this is exactly what Giselle is saying. Could you give me the year of Giselle again? What century? Because I like to check the century.
hold on, give me one quick second.
I forgot to write that down.
He was born on June 21st, June 21st of 1880, and he died on May 29th of 1961.
Ooh, I was born 1950, 27th of May. So I was 11 when Giselle died. I like to do this. I'm a nerd when it comes to this. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
So it was complimenting a lot of his predecessors here. I don't see a contradiction yet.
Yeah, I didn't see any that stated otherwise.
You're right. Yeah, except for Dewey. Dewey contradicted the for today, not tomorrow. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Vicky. Let's see who would like to move on. Somebody else? Are you enjoying your theorist reports? I hope you are. And that you will see this not as an assignment, but as an enlightenment as to how we see our educational process should go. Yes?
Yeah.
I have accomplished that, and then I'm happy. And I hope you are enjoying it. So let's move on. Who else wants to go?
I'll go, Professor.
Sure. Go ahead, Alondra.
Okay, so my theorist is Lev Vygotsky.
Yes.
He was born on November 17, 1896 in Russia. At the age of 21, he received a law degree from Moscow State University. He had various interests, but they were mainly centered on psychology, child development, and education. Sadly, in 1934, at the young age of 37, he died of tuberculosis. His best known theory is social cultural theory. Vygotsky believed that social interaction plays a critical role in children's learning. His next theory is the zone of proximal development, which, to what I understood, is when a child does not understand something, does not have the skills, or cannot act independently, he then seeks help from from another person. This other person can be a teacher, a family member, or even another classmate. And then his next theory is the more knowledgeable other. He describes it as a person who has greater knowledge and skills than the learner. For example, in most cases, an adult, parent, teacher. And that's it for Vygotsky.
Could you stop there? Thank you, Gary. Let me add, do you realize why we do small group teaching also? The zone of proximal development, the one-on-one, when we have special needs children, the one-on-one can be more helpful. He's an advocate for that. And again, that's where if you teach a whole class a skill, a new skill, according to the standard, you're supposed to teach a skill within the standard. The whole class may not all get it, but we take them and bring the little group that didn't get it and put them in the back table, and we reinforce what we're teaching them. That's his philosophy, his belief. The closer you are to the subject that is being taught, even when you do dog training, the zone of proximal development is so crucial because we are unique in our learning styles, even though he's not bringing that in, Gardner's theory does. So look at how that all wraps up. And so I like to believe that when you do your teaching or your clinicals, when I or anyone observes you, I would like that the large group class group is taught, and then when they say you have to teach a small group, don't separate that from that what you just finished teaching. Show your professor. Now we will take the small group to show them or to reinforce what they may not have gotten, and the aha will be there. This is all about Lev Vygotsky. And yes, and I forgot to ask you, do you remember which one was the only American theorist that we've come across so far? The others were German, Russian, French, Rousseau, and all of them. Do you remember if it was Jean Piaget or John Dewey, who was in Vermont? Who did the Vermont one? I want to believe
That was
Piaget.
That was John Dewey.
John Dewey. Piaget, sorry, the French. He's French. How could I mistake that? John Dewey, the only American so far. All the others are German, French, Russian. Let's see how many more Americans will come across. I just have to point that out. But Lev Vygotsky, yeah, he died 1934. And look at the time. What did he die from? Tuberculosis, right? Yes?
Yes.
In that time, my husband, he's a former Franciscan as much as I am a former nun, and he was born in 34. But as he became an adult and not in his late teenagers, right by Northeastern, you have that forest preserve where they built a lot of houses. As you go through, is it Pulaski?
Yes.
Right from Northeastern's parking. That used to be the TB center in Chicago, the tuberculosis center. And I remember that even in 1934, during his birth, right after World War I, as we were going into World War II with crazy Hitler, these vaccines weren't invented yet. So people were dying. And I'm connecting it with this pandemic that we have now. People died from it. When they invented the vaccines for TB, tuberculosis, and they used to send all the patients into those houses, and some are living in, of course, they've done all the purification, they've knocked down buildings and rebuilt. It's an expensive area. If you look deep into the forest preserve there, across from the parking lot, right down, they have a museum, etc. Make that connection. And that used to be a TB ward, and they would just die there because they didn't have a cure for it until the vaccine came into effect, and it took sometimes 5 to 10 years to come up with a vaccine at that time. So listen, this gentleman, Lev Vygotsky, is in that era of all these diseases, and we just are recuperating from World War I, not knowing that crazy Hitler is saying to Germany, "I will make you a better country. Vote for me. Let me be your leader." And shortly after that, and during that time, we're having a depression. And first, not even a recession, we went into a deep depression because we had been fighting World War I. And there was no time for actual concentration on developing that vaccine and other polio, etc. So yeah, he was one of those victims. So we want to make the connection. During the war, this Lev Vygotsky was still doing his sociocultural, developing his theory of sociocultural, which emphasizes the importance of interpersonal. Howard Gardner tells us, which we'll be doing will intensify his study into his study. We're going to study this more deeply. Interpersonal means that you're not shy, you're not inhibited. The intra, Howard Gardner tells us, is the shy child who is timid, not necessarily not intelligent, but just timid. But this gentleman, Lev Vygotsky, is pushing, and Howard Gardner, who brings our theory of multiple intelligences, he was in 1943. Compared in 1934, just before crazy Hitler takes over, and we go to World War II, and then Howard Gardner picks up what Lev Vygotsky is talking about, and then does the theory of multiple intelligences. Isn't that crosswalk from one to the other is so exciting as an educator? Yes. So he also says the zone of proximal development, children can learn more with the help of a more competent person. Our colleague just said that. Communicating between teachers and children can act as a means of what I always use as I teach, scaffolding, temporary support. When you hear the word scaffolding and equating it to temporary support teachers, it's like you stand outside on that temporary platform to wash a window, not you, but people washing windows or painting outside in those high buildings, but they remove that platform. That is called a scaffold. It's a temporary platform. We are scaffolders. We teach them and we slowly remove ourselves so that they become accomplished and show and learn independently. And that's why this word scaffolding is not just used by Lev Vygotsky, but in every textbook and every level of studies that you go through in your profession thus forward, you are going to hear the word scaffolding. Imagine him talking about this in 1934. I'm so excited. Communication between teachers and children. You, I, Ms. Lester, we act as scaffolds to our children. Whenever we don't remove the temporary support and we're constantly spoon feeding them, we're not doing good and we're stifling these children and stifling their learning. He also went on to say use of cooperative learning and other forms of social learning. I don't hear much about cooperative learning today. And cooperative learning is where you have, let's say, 5 students in one group. The little ones you can't do quite yet. 3rd grade is good. Where every single member of the 5 members in that group will have an assignment, a section to work on, but they all work together. The whole thing is not assigned. That's a difference between group and cooperative group. Cooperative means that this end result will only come from Ariel's input, Hannah's input, Victoria's input, Alondra and Sarah working in the group. I'll be the artist, Ariel, you'll be the scribe, Alondra, you'll be the reporter, Diana, you will do the math section or the writing up, you will be the scribe. You see, that's cooperative learning. And he brought that in. In the 80s, cooperative learning was so prevalent in education. I am so sorry to see that it's not being used as much. And you can do that because the learner the child learns from the child who's weak in this area will learn from his colleagues in that group. You make sure that that group is heterogeneously grouped, not homogeneous. What is the difference between? I do a lot of incidental teaching, so bear with me. What is the difference between cooperative learning group and just a group? I could separate my class right now. I say the group from Alondra all the way down to Victoria, you are now in the group to find the pro in terms of the topic of should immigration be blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of you will be in the group that will do the research on the con. You know, the pro and the con, 2 groups, right? You can work independently. You can do all your research. You're going to make sure you present your material. You don't have to meet. And your end product doesn't depend on the other member. You all have the separate topic. You can work independently. Please remember those 2. There is a difference between group and cooperative learning group. This gentleman was pushing for that from then. And I'm going to be quiet for a minute and let you one more presenter and we'll do the rest next Thursday. But again, try to practice that in your classroom. And who I think you need another one, right? Alondra, you have Reggio Emilia yet, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So for Reggio Emilia, it's a special program and an approach to early childhood learning named after the town where it originated in Italy. It was founded by Loris Malaguzzi after World War II.
Could you spell that for everyone to write that down? Because this is an approach, not a theory. Okay, could you spell who founded it?
Yeah, Loris. And then the last name is Malaguzzi.
Malagucci. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds Italian, right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say the meaning or the philosophy behind it. The philosophy behind this approach is every child must have control over their education. They must learn using their 5 senses. They must explore all the new objects they have around them, and they must always have the opportunity to express themselves.
Mhm. Okay. Did they repeat? Did this approach do its homework as Lori Metaguchi came up with this? What did he do? He replicated what he searched in terms of the theorists, put it together. He brought in the nature part. What was the other part you just mentioned? The freedom to learn. Yes, repeating everything that his predecessors had already done research. Many people don't give credit to who did the that's why he's not a theorist. He didn't do a research. He just took from what he found was useful and he implemented it and came up with the approach. You have a lot of strategies in early childhood that they call the strategy approach, teaching strategies approach, all those approaches. Well, this is what they call Reggio Emilia by this gentleman Doris. And if you go to Italy, I mean, you find that there are lots of schools that are considered Reggio Emilia approach, just like you have the Montessori approach, etc. And yes, so I'm not going to elaborate on that unless, Alondra, you have something else to say. Any more, or that's it?
No, that's it, Professor.
Okay, I'd like to thank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you that presented today. I will call it a day, even though it's only 1:20. Do you know why? Because I also had a PowerPoint, and I sent you all the PowerPoints, if I remember, up to 10. Yes, I hope you got them. Could somebody respond to me?
Yes, we got them.
Thank you. I did send it to D2L and also to your emails. Now, it doesn't, I will go through as many as I can, but if I don't, you will have those at your fingertips too, because PowerPoints don't teach, teachers teach. So I want to actually ask you if you are beginning to enjoy learning about theorists and also applying them as you think about it, but as you also think about them in a very critical, sitting through everything they do and think of that crosswalk that we can do. I can see a whole lot of them coming like this and then going this way. So we have a few more of you to present, and we're going to do that on Thursday. We're moving on very well. We're actually on chapter 4 in terms of our textbook, but I don't just go by the text. You do know I am putting in a whole lot of extra resources for you, which which translates over to those slides. I want to thank you for taking notes. I want to thank you for being great listeners and for also doing your work and your research. And I know you still have your philosophy. A few of you have sent them to me, and that philosophy of education is due on the 3rd, if I remember, of February, which is around the corner.
I think it's the 2nd, not the 3rd.
The 2nd? Okay, let me see, I have my book right here. I always have my calendar here. Thank you. And it's the 2nd, yes, of Tuesday. But that means that we still have Thursday to finish our theorists. The philosophy is your philosophy. I want them for me to read and send you a nice comment and grade. And I also want to continue covering our chapters. We have a beautiful book complemented by another because I am going to do justice to it, but in a manner that you're not going to hate just reading and spewing off. I want to bring it to life for you as best as I can. And so bear with me if I take a little longer to get through something, okay? I don't want to rush through things that are important for you. You are at that core, that point where you are entering a profession and you need to be excited about it. And if I kill that excitement for you because I am not doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm at fault because I never wanted to stop having the dream of becoming what I know you can become, an effective early childhood teacher. I want to thank you for listening and for patience you've had with your classmates. So we'll see you on Thursday. Stay safe. Okay? Yes? Everybody's good?
Yeah, you too.
All right. Have a good one.
All right.
Stay safe, all of you.
Professor.
Yes, dear.
Professor?
Yes.
So for this coming Thursday, you wanted me to do
Sigmund Freud, I think you and I have your other classmate, Eddie Kana. We'll be doing Sigmund Freud. You saw how beautiful that was,
Yeah.
how they presented it. It's very easy.
What's the name of the theorist again?
Sigmund Freud.
Could you spell that out?
SIG
SIG
MUND,
MUND
and his last name is Freud, FREUD.
FREUD. Okay. And is there any specific information I have to find? Like,
Do whatever you heard them do. They read, they showed, they brought up important points, and then I will elaborate. Also, don't forget to start your philosophy. I did send off statements, lead off sentences for you, and start writing your philosophy. You'll have a longer time to have it because you joined us late. So I won't hold you to it right now. In the meantime, just relax and get healthy and emotionally strong. You've had a lot of losses, and you can have all the time to get it done as long as you get it done before the end of the semester. Okay?
the philosophy information, can I send you an email asking for more information about it?
I will forward what I sent to everyone. It's a D2L, and I'm going to resend it. Can you go into D2L and find it? It's in your assignment or discussion.
Okay.
Go into D2L. If you don't find it, send me a message and I will resend it to your email because I have it saved. Actually, it's a lot easier if I send it to emails, okay? But try to look for it as you go into D2L. It's about several sentences that help you to lead on to give you a guide as to how to write your philosophy.
All right, thank you, Professor.
Stay well, and please know that the only thing that helps us in a situation like this, prayers and prayers and prayers, okay?
Thank you, Professor. I'll see you later.
It's my pleasure. Take care.
Professor, I have a question.
Sure, Vicky, go ahead.
I sent you my philosophy a while back. Like,
I saw, yes,
I'm
checking.
I don't know. Sometimes like when I send it through the slides, like it doesn't email correctly. So I just want to make sure you got it.
Okay, Vicky, I'm gonna go into my emails later on because right now I have I'll take a break. You know what? I'm gonna clean some snow because we have.
No, it's fine. I just want to make sure you got it. So as long as you got it and then you found the point, I'm good.
Okay, all right, Vicky, and I hope you're enjoying the course. That's
I
more
took
important.
last semester I took 306 of EDFN. So
You did.
yeah, I did.
Okay, so I hope you love this class as much as I do. And
A lot of the stuff too, like for Piaget, Vygotsky, it's like those were mostly like review. So I have a lot of notes on that already because of my former.
Sure, and you see it come alive, right, as you apply it into your practices as a teacher.
Yeah, I was able to do that one time, like where we had to go to the schools before COVID. So
Sure.
I was able to do that at least for a little bit. So I got to.
I'm so happy, Vicky. I'm glad you're on board with me, and let's continue to enjoying our semester, okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Hi, bye-bye.